Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
Welcome back, investors. We have Grant Shipman back for the second half of our round two interview. This is the interview where we delve into his book, Co-Living Investing and Management Gold Standard. You can find it on Amazon. It's a great deal, by the way. Certainly hope it saves you a lot of money for investors who are interested in this type of investment. And for those who haven't heard of it, it's a very fascinating, very high cash flowing investment. It's also definitely a niche. If you're coming from single family buy and hold and you think, hey, I'm just going to convert this to a co-living space, I think you may be mistaken. Definitely, this is something you want to get some coaching, read a book, do some courses on before you jump into. There are a lot of pitfalls. In the first episode, we talked a lot about the regulatory pitfalls and some things you're going to have to do to make sure that you don't run afoul of. We talked a lot about the household-led property management. We're going to go into much deeper detail in that in the second half. And in his book, he'll describe that this is really the secret sauce. If you understand the household-led property management, that's really the key to you becoming successful in this space. He's also going to give away a market that he's been very successful in, which he's not buying in anymore. And so I think if you're interested in this space, you're definitely going to want to stick around to find out where he continues to manage but is not currently buying as a result of interest rates. As well, he'll tell you some markets that he is buying in. So with that, I would like to welcome back our guest, Grant Shipman. He's the author of Co-Living Investment Management Gold Standard. He also has the first course in co-living. He has over 20 years of experience in the space. And with that, again, let's welcome to the show, Grant Shipman.
George, it's great to be here. Thanks for continuing to host this great podcast. It's an honor.
Thank you so much. And then you do mention an LLC, and these are residential properties. So some people would say, don't do that. I know one of the things in your book is you say, you know, your lawyer told you that they've never seen the due on sale executed. So, hey, I like that. Sorry, I don't mean to give away the goods there. I just wanted to kind of move on to tenant selection. It seems like tenant selection is huge. So you're making money hand over fist here, but it's not like you're not working for that. It's not like you can just put an ad in the paper and then screen, like, for example, at an apartment, I do screening. You got to have the credit score. You got to have the income. And by the way, you're talking about people that are earning $4,000 or $5,000 a month and paying $700. So it's fair to say that your tenants are definitely not house poor. They're not rent constrained. And then, from there, yeah, you have to make sure that they've got steady income, sure that they've been there, hopefully at least 6 months, et cetera. These are the sorts of things that you do in ordinary. By the way, I have a property manager that does all that for me. But those are ordinary property management screening tools. But I get the feeling that what you got to do is got to go way beyond that. Like, for example, I've heard of landlords that will kind of take a peek at the tenant's car when they drive up, if they get a chance. Like, if their car is slovenly, this person's a slob, keep them out of my unit. So do you have any ways that you keep out people that are either not compliant, not cooperative, or who seem like slobs?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So we're going to smoke some brain cells here because I have never had credit requirements, income requirements. We do a standard background check, right? So anybody that has violent or theft background, we don't allow in. But this is what's really rad.
But I got to tell a great story. I seem to remember from a property manager that we had one that committed some heinous violent crime. But but that was like 14 months ago. Come on, man.
Right. It was a lifetime ago.
Buddy.
Yeah. And this is when people think about co-living as investors, sometimes we think that this is a higher risk profile or that there's going to be more wear and tear on a property. And that's actually when I first started, I met with all these real estate people with more experience. And that's what they told me. And I was like, well, we'll see, right? Perhaps. But here's what's amazing. When, if Joe Bob rents out a house that to a single family and they have a lease on that house, right? Joe Bob is really hoping that those people take care of the house and don't destroy it. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
George, what do you think is the average property manager? How often do they get to go into the property to inspect it? Is that once a year, or what do you
My
think?
leases, as I remember, and it's different in each state, I want to say you usually have the right to go in about twice a year to inspect it. But if you got some other things, you can usually announce within 24 hours. But then if you ask me, how often do you actually inspect your properties? And are we talking about every unit? If I've got something that's 100 units, do you think that I or a property manager walks through every unit even once a year? No, no.
Well, as a co-living investor using the same house as Jim Bob, I have way less risk. And the reason is once a month, my property manager is going to do a 20-minute little walkthrough, and everybody's pumped to see them because they bring toilet paper, cleaning supplies, they drop out some candy with a card. And the biggest challenge for the property manager is to not get chatted to death, because people are such raving fans of the property manager stopping by to drop off these things that they're just like, I've got to go to my other 19 houses, where Jim Bob with that house, they're seeing it, like you said, once, twice a year. We're seeing it every month at least. But the other one is, say a bad apple slips through, right? That could happen. A bad apple slips through. It's a 7-person household. 6 other responsible adults are going to take care of that problem. It's way better than security cameras or driving by or checking if the person has a crappy car or not. Like I just don't have the risk profile. And for that matter, the normal family with kids is putting tons of wear and tear on their house. Responsible adults are usually at work, they're at the gym, they're out at movies. These houses are kept so clean, so fantastic. I mean, so it's just to say, as co-living investors, we get the best of both
people
worlds.
who are there for need, right? I mean, talking $700, I've got some units that go for about $700. And I will tell you that they attract a very rough crowd, and the screening has to be, very seriously done. Even the ones that get let through, they usually still trash the place. So what you're saying is that this attracts a completely different demographic. Some of that is probably the communities you're operating in. I don't think we're going to have much time to get very deeply into that. Obviously, there's a lot of legal, regulatory, and compliance issues that you've got to look at. Obviously, the wrong town is going to shut you down if you don't. And this is one of the things you talk about. You have to go and do your homework, whether it's
Right.
Airbnb, short-term rental, whether it's co-living, residential, senior living, all these things. Anytime you're trying to do something that's a little bit off of the mainstream, you really have to go and look very seriously at that. But at the same time, hey, if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're going to get the results everybody else gets. And
Right.
I thought the question you were going to ask me a minute ago was, what do you expect the average single-family rental gets each month? Cash flow of $100 to $200. Yeah, that's about right. When I heard people tell me that, like, I remember years ago, I was thinking about going to single family, and I asked the guy, hey, why don't you leverage your property? Saying, you think I want to manage this thing for $200 a month cash flow? Forget it,
Right.
So he puts all his money in, literally buys it outright, and then he gets some nice cash flow out of it. But I don't know about the returns. So at that point, I said, okay, I'm not going to do single family. I'm done.
Yeah, and that's actually, I mean, it's exactly correct, right? Like $200 for a single family door is like, ooh, that's fantastic. And sometimes I need to like smack myself, and because I forget that the normal investor is not like, for me, I will not get a house unless it cash flows. That means it covers the loan and it covers my reserves. It cash flows at least 1,000. But we just did a training a couple weeks ago, and we go on, we find a house, we look at regulation, making sure it's legal. We look at, we make sure it's in a strong recession-proof area. Anyway, this house we found, it made $2,700 cash flow a month, and somebody in the training put it under contract. and so I forget sometimes that, the single family investment world, even though Warren Buffett says, hey, what a great investment class, it's a challenge. $200 cash flow.
Right.
Oh,
Well, I think to actually qualify that, I think what he said is it'd be great if I could buy these by the thousands.
right.
And which is exactly why he's not in that business. It would
Right.
be nice.
Really
if I
good
could buy
point.
the single family homes by the thousands, I sure would.
Right. Yeah. Great point. Yeah. I just, like I shared with you before the show, now we're working on buying them like 20 at a time. So it's a little bit better, but what you touched on as far as like due diligence and, if you're going to go swim, like learn how to swim first. This kind of thing is regulations are important. Like right now, a tale of two cities. A really big player in the co-living space is a company called PadSplit. And
Yes.
I'm friends with the GM, been around since 2017. But something they do is they forget to mention to people conveniently, to investors, that there are regulations as far as how many unrelated adults can share a house. And how that's worked out right now is in Dallas, Fort Worth, a lot of these owners are losing their butts because code enforcement is cracking down hard. And where another city, exact same time, this is happening right now in Jacksonville, Florida, the courts said, wait a second, this is against fair housing. We are discriminating based on family status. So they're just like Colorado did, they're changing the law. So thankfully, Airbnb is getting regulated to death, where the regulation is going in co-living's favor.
Loosening in your favor. I like that. Yeah, I think this is a beautiful idea. I really do hope it spreads. I have heard of PadSplit. I think it's a great idea. It's amazing. I mean, all of this, I think it really gets back to technology. Without technology, there is no efficient way to share a car or a house. It's very difficult to get the like-minded individuals together. Although, I mean, with a history of thousands of years, people have done it, but they didn't exactly become millionaires out of it. It was more a matter
Right.
of just wanting that sort of communal living space.
Right on.
All right, yeah, totally. Yeah, technology is huge. I mean, it's literally changed our world. I mean, people are now even sharing their own personal car. Like there's Turo, I've heard, and I think in Europe particularly, it's huge. You just add the technology to your car, and then somebody opens the door with a cell phone. It's just crazy what people can do these days. We talked a little bit about market selection, and I know that's huge. We talked about the regulatory end, but with single family, for example, and in a sense, this is kind of a hybrid. You're buying these single family homes, but then you're turning it into something which is more of a commercial enterprise or a business. So a lot of people in single family say, oh, you just have to invest in your backyard. That's your only way to do it. What would you say? Investing in your backyard versus casting a wider net.
Yeah, I think that I was real grateful that when I got started, I invested where I was. And really, I just moved to that area. I was using other people's money, so I wanted to move to a very, very safe, great area, north Denver. But that being said, right now, even with co-living, getting such massive returns, it's hard to break even in the greater Denver area with a new buying a house, right, because of interest rates. So yeah, investing other places and being able to do that, having a team. Now I'm like almost exclusively buying in Texas and Florida because it just makes a lot more sense. That being the case, we take on properties in Colorado to manage left and right because then we're making money, without even having to buy.
Yeah, the approach, very fascinating. And again, a lot of what this show is about is introducing people to various types of private equity. I mean, my book, a lot of it deals with all the various things you can invest in private equity. I'm only an operator in multifamily. So when I write these books, when I put up these podcasts, it's not all just about getting people into my funnel. If somebody watches this podcast today and they say like, wow, hey, this is what I want to do. How do they get in touch with you? How do they become an investor?
Yeah, and man, multifamily, right? Like that's when people got into it, right, where you do in the pros, right? Oh my gosh, I was studying it because this is like a multifamily in a single family, right?
It is.
So but the really the best thing is anybody wanting to learn, curious at all, just go to 𝐋𝐢𝐳𝐵𝐚𝐧𝐿𝐽.com. We do free trainings we have all kinds of stuff there because, I mean, just make things easier, faster, better. But 𝐋𝐢𝐳𝐵𝐚𝐧𝐿𝐽.com, and we've got all the social media, all the everything. I'm just working really hard as far as the book, everything to put this out there because people are doing it, and so but save yourself some pain and go there.
Yes, it's just some pain, and I like to say that intelligent people learn from their mistakes. The wise learn from the mistakes of others. At $35, if you're thinking about investing either passively or actively in the space, I would completely recommend go to Grant. I mean, you've got not only the first course and some free material on your website, but also a great book, 367 pages. If that book doesn't save you at least $35, you're probably hopeless. Just give up and go back to the stock market. So you can go to 𝐋𝐢𝐳𝐵𝐚𝐧𝐿𝐽.com. Love it, and that's with a dash, and we'll make sure that that's spelled correctly in our show notes. And want to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience, Grant. This has been a great second round.
Oh man, I love this, George. Yeah, and I mentioned this before the show, but I wanted to say it again. Is recently the podcast dropped about your network is your net worth. Like just being able to know people, but like when you find passive, this passive income, financial freedom, you help people get to, then we get to like who we get to hang out with, right? This has connected us together. So just to say, 100 thanks back at you. And I will say for anybody who checks out that book, unfortunately, I'm not great at a lot of fluff and, like little parables and stories. This thing is like, the biggest critique I've gotten is like, Grant, this is just a manual. And really what it's meant to be is somebody can read it. And then as they're doing co-living investing, they can go back to a certain chapter. It's becomes more like a reference book. That being said, I need to come out with some things that are a little bit more like, fluffy stories, encouraging. So I'll work on I'll talk with you about getting some notes on how to develop that part of me a little bit more.
Sure, we'll add some hummingbirds and some unicorns to the next edition.
Yeah, I mean, I need that in books, right? I'm saying it in a positive way. I need that in books. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Grant. Excellent episode. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to do a round 3. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, George.